Rhode Island's news, arts, and entertainment weekly. Available free at over 700 locations throughout Rhode Island every Thursday. And by New England Telephone, part of the NYNEX family of companies. 30,000 people strong, serving New England's communications needs.
Hi, welcome to the 13th state. And we're leaving the borders of the state once again this week to take a look at things going on in Eastern Europe. We're going to be looking specifically at Lithuania, one of the three Baltic nations that has finally been granted independence by the Soviet Union after having been taken over about 50 years ago by Joseph Stalin. We have with us a couple of students from Brown University. To my immediate right, we have Antanas Vainius.
Antanas Vainius, right?
Hey, I said it okay. Okay, and Antanas is from the Philadelphia area and has relatives in Lithuania. Okay, and Keith Spiegel, who is from Los Angeles. He is also a student at Brown and also a member of an organization we'll talk about in a little bit, BALTIKA. But Keith did some editing on something you're going to be seeing in just a few minutes, and it is a tape that's called, and wish me luck on this one. Take a look at that spelling that you gave me phonetically here, Antanas. It's Nepriklausomybe.
Right.
All right, okay. And could you translate that for us?
That means, well, Nepriklausomybe means independence in English. And,
okay.
Well, that's the title of the video, of the documentary that we're going to show.
Okay, now I want to point out that this documentary was made in January. And January was when there was a lot happening in Lithuania. Now, Keith, you did the editing?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. How did you get your hands on the tape?
Well, a friend of Antanas's, a close family friend, had smuggled the videotape out of Lithuania about 2 weeks before. I think he escaped the country about 2 days after the January crackdown.
That was about January 13th, I think was the date that the crackdown began, right?
Yeah, and the way he smuggled it out was he transferred it from the European format, PAL, to American VHS, and put it on a tape, a VHS tape that had an Elvis Presley sticker on it, and then made it past customs by you know, fooling the guards.
In other words, getting it past the then Soviet guards that were working at Lithuanian customs.
Yeah, exactly. Because normally they would confiscate something like that. They confiscated several of his photos, and for some reason he made it by. Although the quality was a little bit degraded because there were magnets in the customs area to sort of make sure that no tape would get by, but it's pretty much intact.
You know, when you mention things like the European format, you're talking about the fact that the television technically is a little bit different there than it is here. Okay. All right. So this was a friend of your family,
right,
who was visiting there, I guess?
He was there on a business trip. Okay. The business was, he's into orthopedics, and he's trying to start joint ventures because all the medicine that exists there is very, very, I mean, it's ancient. The technology that they have now is the technology that we had like 30, 40, 50 years ago.
Okay.
So that was the reason, and the crackdown occurred, and you know, since he was born in Lithuania, he is technically a Soviet citizen, and they could detain him at the border.
Okay.
So that's why it was very urgent for him to leave the country as soon as possible. So he eventually procured a ticket, and he was able to get on the next train and leave Lithuania.
It's interesting you say eventually procured a ticket. While under Soviet control, you couldn't just walk up to an airport and say, sell me a ticket, or a travel agent, sell me a ticket to the United States.
Right. Well, that's the whole issue of travel is very strictly monitored in the Soviet Union. People are not necessarily allowed to travel in the Soviet Union, Soviet citizens, to leave, let's say, the Lithuanian Republic to Latvia. You have to get a permit of sorts. And to leave the borders of the Soviet Union is, I mean, it's a monstrous feat in itself, because you have to go through all the bureaucracy of filling out an invitation, and then you have to fill out a visa, which, you know, 10 years ago would have taken about a year and a half to get
cleared.
Right. And now that Lithuania is free, they have taken all these regulations and have simplified them so that, you know, travel and all these other business sort of relations that people want to have with, you know, the Baltics or just in general nations that were in the Soviet Union would be a lot easier.
Okay. Now, Keith, how long did it take to put all of this videotape together?
Well, we were kind of in a rush because we wanted it to get out as fast as possible to show it to the brown community. So it took roughly 5 nights of all-night editing, pretty much, until 5 in the morning every single night. And we started it, I think, on Sunday night, and the premiere was on Friday night. So it was intense, but very satisfying.
How was it received?
Very well. We didn't expect to get that many people in such a short time. We basically, in 3 days, we postered the campus to get people to come. We had an artist design a poster, and then we put an advertisement in the school paper. And we got to the theater of the night, and it was packed. There were like 300 people there.
Where on the campus did you have it?
The Salomon Center.
Okay, that's right there on the square.
The main green. Yeah.
I mean, it's a lecture hall, and it was filled. But then, I mean, we were so oblivious to everything that was going on because we were spending all this time in the studio. And, my friends were saying that campus looked like it was flooded with all these posters of the event. So I guess, it evened out, and, we were lucky to have a lot of people show interest and participate.
It was very surprising, too, because that was when the Gulf War had just started, like 2 weeks before. And we really didn't expect anyone to be interested in this. We thought anyone who's interested in politics would be, protesting
tied up
the
with the
war.
Gulf War. Okay, now we've got the entire tape here. I understand the 15 minutes as it was seen on campus and has been seen on some other campuses, but has never been broadcast in its entirety before. Is that correct? Okay, why don't we have a take a look now at, let's take a look at the tape.
Только что приехали из парламента, где мы снимали красные митинги.
The soldiers stand ready to disband the demonstrators who gathered in front of the Vilnius newspaper plant. To frighten the people, machine guns were fired. As the situation unfolds, we cannot tell how many have been killed, but the ambulances are leaving with the injured. The soldiers seemed nervous. They refused to listen to the Lithuanians, refused to respond to the pleas, to the people begging them to reconsider their actions. Will the parents of these soldiers ever find out that their sons shot not only at the walls to frighten the crowds, but directly at those who gathered to protest in peace? The situation is indefinite. No one knows what is going on. The soldiers have tried to grab our camera, so we have to move to protect the equipment. This is definitely not training as we initially thought. The situation is tense and stressful. As the tanks tear through the square, we have to run so as not to be crushed. The people are stricken with fear, although the majority ran to form a human barricade in front of the main entrance of the press building. The Soviet soldiers are trying to break in by force. Only a few lucky people were able to escape. Now no one can get in or out of the press building.
Пораженная, смотрите сами.
Dabar negaliu pasakyti, kiek, bet greitai.
Nepatikrintais duomenimis 15 žmonių iš ypatingo.
Стоило бы поговорить сегодня вместо таких действий. И вот тут.
If you are without blame, then why do you cover up with your name the deeds of the murderers? If you could have stopped their hand, then why didn't you do it? Where is your country going? It is going towards a terrifying abyss, and it could pull the rest of the world with it. Why must you do this? Stop the murderers. If you can, stop them. Reporting live from the television tower, shots have been heard around the television tower. Shots were fired at the demonstrators who gathered around the tower. Tanks and armored personnel carriers entered the battle. Machine guns were also heard. In this extraordinary situation, I will allow myself to step out of the official framework for a reporter and personally ask you to watch and honestly make your deductions. Power established by force for more than 70 years held this country, and now, having no excuses for itself, used weapons once again. I would like to find words so that every one of you can understand me. Can we really return the old order with newly shed blood? Do you really want that? Are you prepared, in the name of Bolshevik psychology, to bring new bloody sacrifices for the old idea? An idea which did not bring us freedom, equality, nor a good life? The socialist ideal ended up being cruel. It was not capable of providing people with what it once promised. We could and we should have criticized the new government of the Baltics for the mistakes they made in ruling. However, when the doubtful are faced with a choice, I cannot possibly choose a government which is capable of using arms against the unarmed citizens. But these sacrifices did not stop the Bolsheviks from putting through their ideas which were meant to make humans happy, but which did not live up to their goals. And now, new blood is being shed. All of us are to blame for this, not only those directly involved. We are to blame for a low level of civilization, for letting these sacrifices take place, for not being ready to protect the democratic movement.
Pictures like this have not been seen by Europe since 1968, since the Prague Spring. This is such a dreary disaster.
In 1941, when the Russians were in Lithuania, I was just a little girl, and I carried milk. I carried milk in 2 huge buckets at a time. I let the soldiers drink. I fed these people. I fed their fathers. And now their sons are threatening my life.
My best friend was killed. It is very sad. I cannot describe how I feel. The last I saw him was when the tank came between us. He disappeared in the crowd. He was gone. We waited until the tanks left, and the people began dispersing. We looked for him. but we couldn't find him. We started calling his name. And checking the injured who were being carried away from the tower. Finally, we saw our friend. He was lying on the ground, actually embedded in the ground, crushed by the treads of a Soviet tank. I can't even express it in words. It is a return to dictatorship. There is a revolution. No words to explain it. We are evidently returning to the times of Stalin. This is the end of democracy.
And now, a few words for the people. The people who are suffering in this nation. The nation which is once again slipping into the abyss of red fascism. People, stand together. Protect your families, your future. Protect the peace. And the peace that must come to their hearts, their thoughts, and that world in which we live. Rekindle your spirits.
Everything was quiet. We were planning to leave and come back the following day. But we met some friends, so we did not leave. I guess this was our destiny.
Please support us in this difficult hour. Daktarė, jūs man staigiai šitą pasakojimą. Aš pasiruošęs kamerai.
What should Bush do?
He must call Gorbachev on the red line and tell him that regardless of the situation in the Persian Gulf, the murder of Lithuania is still a murder. If Gorbachev doesn't stop this, then no one will protect him from his own murderers. When he becomes a zero in the West, he will also be a zero to his colonels.
Who was killed?
My father.
Your father?
Yes, my father. I walked out in front of the tower. The people dispersed and he did not come back.
Have you found him?
Yes.
Run over by a tank?
Yes.
Okay, that was that videotape, and I'll defer to you, Antanas, on pronouncing it.
It's Nepriklausomybe.
Okay, and that was the tape that was smuggled from Lithuania, as you've seen. And again, just backing up for people who may have missed the beginning of the show, that was smuggled out of Lithuania at the beginning of this year, right after the crackdown that the Soviets put on there. I wanted to ask you now about some of the places that we had seen there. That was all in Vilnius, wasn't it?
Right, that was in the capital of Lithuania, in Vilnius. And the big building that you saw in the beginning was the actual parliament of Lithuania, and then the field with, the crowds of people. That was all in central Vilnius. And eventually, you shoot to, or you see images of buildings, apartment buildings, and that's right outside the city, where, the army barracks are located of the Soviet soldiers who were the ones who entered the city during the crackdown.
The man who did this to the camera, Soviet soldier?
Right. Actually, he's not a Soviet soldier. He is the top Soviet soldier. He was spearheading the whole crackdown in Lithuania. And there was recently an article in Time magazine about the Black Berets, and he is the leader of them.
Okay.
And the Black Berets are the ones who were assigned to go through this mission.
One of the places that was featured in there as well, I think, was the radio and TV facility.
Right.
Okay, and I think that kind of gets to the heart of what we're here talking about, too, in that when the Soviets went to crack down, one of the things that they wanted to do was to control communications. And one of the big forces in the world in the last few years has been the way that people have been able to take over the communications. We saw it with the fax machines during the Chinese crackdown in Tiananmen Square, and this footage that was smuggled out of Lithuania to get the message out of what was going on, right?
Right.
Yeah. Just also, I think it was interesting, at the beginning of the show we mentioned that the tape had come out in a VHS Elvis box. Right. The tape wasn't actually shot by the man who brought it here, was it?
No, it wasn't. He was the one, he received the tape from a group of journalists who were shooting. And the journalists who were shooting, a lot of them were amateurs, and quite a few of them were professionals. So they compiled it in the television station right before the soldiers came in and took it over. And they pulled this tape out, literally of the machine, and then, they eventually gave it to him. And he was able to eventually leave the
So it was really a combination of footage done by reporters and amateurs. So it's really interesting.
Now, this is the first time it's been seen in its entirety on American television.
Right.
Who has seen it? This tape?
What other networks? Or?
Well, no, as far as you brought it to a lot of college campuses, and it's been brought to the attention, at least, of some international leaders.
Yeah, we actually showed it to some White House officials. We met with the Deputy Assistant to the President, Sichan Siv, back in May, and the motive of that was to try to get it seen to in front of the National Security Council, and we never actually heard it, because they're very secretive about those kinds of details. But we gave a copy to Shevardnadze when he came to speak at Brown, and Antanas gave a copy to Landsbergis over the summer when he was in Lithuania shortly before the coup. And it's also been screened at college campuses. That's been our main source of distributing it.
I guess the Soviet near coup really did have a big effect in Lithuania. That's what led to the actual, I guess you could say, on the part of the Soviets crying uncle and saying, okay, we give up, you've got your independence.
Right. Well, it wasn't so much crying uncle as they really lost control of all the reform that was going on. And I'd like to make a point about what Keith was saying, that we don't know what's going on deep inside the National Security Council. But when I was in Lithuania, I was able to meet with Landsbergis and find out this information that didn't really end up being disclosed to the public. And one of the important things that I heard was that these Black Berets, who were supposed to do a lot of the violent actions,
the dirty work,
the dirty work, they were given a tranquilizer before they were supposed to do this. And right before they were supposed to start their mission, they were given a shot of grain alcohol. And this is not based on hearsay. This was found out when an autopsy was done on one of the bodies, which happened to be a Black Beret soldier. And the mixture of these two chemicals really created some sort of, had a horrible effect on the people's, mental state, which caused them to,
so that no feelings of morality would get in the way, for example. Okay. Two things I wanted to ask you about in the remaining 2.5 minutes here. One of them is, were the people in Lithuania actually expecting a crackdown like this to come? The other thing I want to find out about is, now that independence is gained, I mean, that's not the end of the line, is it?
No, actually, they've celebrated it, and now they have to clean everything up. That was done. I mean, everything was virtually stopped. And, the Soviets were implementing their 5-year plans. They were implementing all these different rules or legislation that they had, which is absolutely backward. Mm-hmm. And now they have to rebuild their whole economy. And I'm actually very glad to be Lithuanian and not Russian, because the process is going to take, I don't know how many more years in Russia because of its size.
Got about 20, how many millions of Russian people?
I think 200 some odd million. I mean, Lithuania we only have 4. And there are total about 10 million Baltic citizens.
The Lithuanian people there, they were surprised when the tanks came in?
They weren't expecting to die. But the moment they found out that something was wrong was when the tanks were coming through, they had one of the tanks just drove up on one of the civilian cars and crushed it. And then it drove into one of the trucks that was, I think it was transporting some sort of commodity. And when they saw that the soldiers weren't actually training,
this is something like when the American sailors at Pearl Harbor realized there was no drill. Right? Okay. Keith, we've only got about another 15 seconds. Do you see an opportunity to put together something like this ever again?
Well, I guess after this summer with the coup in Moscow, there should be more footage coming in. And that was certainly.
But the urgency isn't there anymore, I would imagine. No.
That's true.
Okay, well, I want to thank both of you for spending some time with us and sharing the tape with us. Keith Spiegel and Antanas Vainius, thanks very much for joining us. And thank you for watching. See you next week on the 13th State.